Hello, hello, and welcome to Live Dream Interpretation. Live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We are thrilled to be here with you today and excited for what God is going to do. Please welcome my co-host, General Neil Tolley.
Good evening, John. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's bright and sunny down here in Florida, and it's very pleasant because it's no longer as hot as it usually is. Starting to change. Seasons are changing,
Well, that's fun.
probably in more ways than one. So that's a good thing.
I am back in the Bat Cave.
Nice.
You can see
I like the background. Very nice.
nice and dark with the wood, and yeah, I like it. It's dark and cool, so it's great for naps and or recording.
Excellent.
It's better to block out all the light so you can control the light instead of having natural light coming in from different directions that doesn't balance out over your face and everything else. But anyway, here we are.
Once again.
Would you like the honor of opening us up in prayer?
Absolutely. Let's
Okay.
pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you and praise you for bringing us together once again. Father, we thank you that you are Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and we pray that you'd send your Holy Spirit here today to move amongst us. Pray that you'd be our honored guest and speak to us because your servants are listening. Pray that you'd give us discernment, wisdom. Pray that you'd continue to give us dreams and visions and prophetic words, just the way Joel said you would. We trust that you're doing that today, and you are the one who gives the interpretation. So we pray that you'd open our ears, help us to hear, and give the interpretation that you want to the people who you've given dreams. And we lift up every single one of those people that are going to share tonight. Pray that you'd bless them mightily with the word that you're going to give them. We thank you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. Well, y'all know the drill. If you have a dream, click in the comments on the link that we have. Make sure your camera's on and then come on. We try to give preference to people that either haven't been on in a while or are brand new. So if you're brand new, go ahead and leave us a message in the private chat and just let us know that you're brand new and you have a short dream that you want to share with us, and we will oblige you. Let's start with Troy.
Good evening.
Welcome back, Troy.
Yeah, this is I'll just give you a quick briefing before I read his dream. As my one son, I said he had the dream, and the Uncle Todd in here is my brother, and then the other names like Tyler, TJ, Timothy, that's all my other children. And
I'm seeing a pattern.
What's that?
I'm seeing a pattern.
A pattern? Well, they're all T's.
Yes.
And they're all TABs to beat that.
Wow.
So I just wanted to let you know, so when you're reading that, you realize it's the family. It's myself involved in the dream with the children. Who actually, my son had the dream. So my son, he says, we were up at Uncle Todd's. That's my brother, and we were playing hide and seek on a big playground. This when we say up at my brother's, it's the same farm. I live in the farmhouse. My brother, we built a house on the farm, and my dad built a house. We have 3 houses here on the farm. So when we say up, it's up on a hill from where we're at. We were playing hide and seek on a big playground, and these things were chasing us like winged dragons. And if they tagged you / bit you, then you would be it, but it changed the people they bit, like they weren't the same anymore. Then all of a sudden the attack started. After a while of hiding, the main villain showed up, and it was either a woman or a man wearing baggy monk looking clothes riding on a dragon that had 7 heads. So me and Tyler escaped through the woods and came out in our fields on the other side where there was a house where all of us kids were. Everyone seemed fine now because as long as we were on our property, the villain couldn't get us. But then some weird looking military vehicles showed up and started to ask questions looking for us. The entire time I could tell they weren't real military, but they were posing as legit military. And then they started to line all of us kids up. The main guy in charge said, I'm going to take you out one by one. By this time, I had escaped and went down to the house to get Dad and Mom. there was a weird tornado or hurricane around the house, and it looked like it was destroying our house until I got closer and nothing was wrong with the house. I went inside and found Dad and told him what was happening. Then I started to head back to where this was happening. And on my way, someone came with news, fake news, that Timothy had been shot, wounded with life-threatening injuries. I kept heading back to where they were, and I heard shots starting to ring, bang, bang, bang. And it was the fake military dude and Travis with his concealed pistol going at it. Then one by one, TJ and Tyler started firing back, then started looking for a gun to go help. Dad gave me a Walter pistol. I started to go outside, but by this time the fight was over and everyone started coming inside. Timmy was fine, just a minor injury, and the rest of them minor injuries. They had all shot once in the left leg up near the hip, except Travis had been shot twice, once in the left leg and once above the heart. At this time, we were sitting around the kitchen table, still surprised that they would attack us like that. We were loading our guns, getting ready to fight. Even Dad started to carry a pistol, even though, according to the government, convicted felons aren't allowed to. One thing in this dream is that it was apparent that Dad and Mom had been fighting these people for a while now, and after this unlawful attack, well, unlawful according to their laws, we were done fighting by their rules. It's time to go on the offensive.
Wow, lot there. Now, at the beginning, you're on the family farm, and you mentioned a dragon, and then you said the enemy. Was the dragon the enemy? Or was the enemy this cadre of alleged pseudo wannabe military people?
Both were. He said all of a sudden attack started, and while of hiding, the main villain showed up, and it was either a woman or a man wearing baggy monk-looking clothes riding on a dragon that had 7 heads.
Wow.
And then the fake military that he said showed up was an enemy too. They were trying to attack the family.
Well, that's really interesting. There's a lot there. It's a good warfare dream. Neil, you have anything, or I can go?
Either. You can go first, but yeah, I completely agree. This is a spiritual warfare dream that involves you and your wife and your children who you've been teaching, and your brother too. So whoever's on the land, that's a protected place, but they're coming to you, but they really can't hurt you. So go ahead, John.
Yeah, well, the idea that, first of all, it's a 7-headed vehicle that carries the main villain. So 7 heads, of course, we know from Daniel and Revelation, the idea of 7 horns or 7 heads representing 7 governments and or branches of government. I like what Dawn says here, which is the 7 mountains. The idea that whoever the villain is wants to ride out and possibly attack the 7 mountains. I don't know that it would be an attack from all 7 mountains on you. But it could certainly be an attack on something that affects the 7 mountains, which, as we know, is finances and money. Money, I know they talk about 7 areas of influence. Money's in every area. You want to get to the top of any area, you got to have money and lots of it, pretty much. And so when I worked in finance, I was at a conference that talked about, well, which mountain are you? And I'm like, well, I'm working with schools and churches and movie projects and businesses. And so I didn't think I fit. And then God said, money is in all of the mountains. So it's like the spring. He actually had me draw a lake underneath the 7 mountain picture that I had in my notes with a line going up into the tops of each mountains. And he said that it's the spring water system to the tops of the mountains is what finance is. And so the idea of the 7 heads, which is something that affects all 7 mountains or 7 areas of influence, sounds like it could be a financial attack. The idea of a dragon is the idea of scorched earth. They leave absolutely nothing in their wake. I just recently watched Smog and the 5 Armies, the Hobbit series. And just talked to my dad today, and he watched them too. But it kind of shows you the whole idea of scorched earth, no land, no houses, no belongings, usually no people unless somehow they're able to escape. So the idea of leaving nothing behind, but the idea of the army coming in wanting to act like their military, I think is really interesting, because I believe that has to do with government overreach, heavy-handed government overreach in particular.
Yeah.
And this sounds like an attack because it is a seven-headed dragon. It's a vehicle that you don't have. You don't have a dragon, so it's hard to fight, a dragon without a dragon, or a spaceship, or something, an airplane, something that you could take to the air and shoot it down. But I liked in the first part how it was your land was protected land. And so the seven-headed dragon and the main protagonist behind this, the villain, couldn't get onto your land, at least initially, right?
Yeah, no, it never could. It's a fake military that came in then and eventually started, but they didn't ever get on the land. They were like at a bordering land, and that's where they were shooting from. They were like, they were up on this hill, and down over the other side of the hill is where it wasn't our land, but that's where they were shooting from.
So they weren't even there. So they never made it to your land.
No.
Yeah. So I think it's the idea of protecting your land, protecting your family. I don't think it's literal. I think the dream has to do with spiritual warfare, but can also have context outside of spiritual warfare, which means it may be manifesting in situations in your life. We've talked, and since we've obviously done like 4 dreams, we know a little bit about some of the things that you're going through. And I do believe that it is about that. But I also think that the idea that it can't protect your land is also a prayer directive. It's a strategy. Psalm 91, no harm will befall you, no disaster will come near your tent. You only look upon and see the recompense of the wicked being a pseudo pretend military that would want to come against you, the wicked being people that are in charge of governmental overreach. We have a lot of wicked, corrupt politicians in our country right now, and God is cleaning that up, and he is doing away with that. I think it's interesting, too, the idea of the dragon is indicative of both Daniel and Revelation, which is, typically it's a lady on top of the dragon, and it's the Whore of Babylon is what it is. And there's a lot of people that think that Babylon represents America in that context. I disagree, but it's just an interesting kind of juxtaposition between your dream and some of the visions in Daniel and Revelation. What are your thoughts, Neil?
I agree with everything you've said so far. Satan's also referred to as the dragon sometimes, and it's obviously this is a spiritual war. What I found interesting is after the military shows up, the fake military shows up, and they line up your sons, and they say they're going to shoot them, and eventually they do. Each one in the left hip, right? Is that where they get shot?
Yeah, right below the hip.
Kind of reminds me of Jacob wrestling with the Lord, and he dislocates his hip, each one of them. So it's like they're marked, different enemy in this case. And I think Jacob was the right hip, wasn't it? I'll have to look that one up. I think if it was the right hip, then this is the opposite. It's like, the devil's in the left-handed, they've been marked. It's not a life-threatening injury. But the part that was interesting is one of your sons escaped to get you, you and mom, the reinforcements. But when he was going, he heard a huge windstorm or a tornado or something like that.
Tornado, right? Hurricane. He said, yeah, tornado or like hurricane. He thought it was destroying the house.
But no damage to anything.
No damage to anything. It appeared that way. And he said, but when he got there, he realized it wasn't doing anything to the house.
Yeah, I think it was Ezekiel in the cave, wasn't it? When he was lamenting that he was the only one left, and there was a firestorm that came by and a rushing wind, but the Lord wasn't in the wind, but the Lord sent the wind. What's that? Elijah, that's right.
Yeah.
But, after the wind came, what happened to the dragon? Did it disappear?
Yeah, the dragon disappeared out of the dream then. Yeah.
So even though you weren't able to fight the war with the carnal weapons that you had, even the spiritual weapons that you had, God sent the only thing, or one of the things that would knock something out of the air, a bigger wind than it was creating to keep it aloft. Right. So, God's got your back. He's protecting your property, your family, and there's no damage to pretty much anything. So you guys start fighting back. you give one of your sons a Walther, I guess.
Yeah, he said it was specific, a Walter.
That's a very specific weapon. I mean, that's a British one. Interesting. It's a nice weapon. Did you say which kind? What model it was?
Or just no, he didn't say that. He just said a Walter pistol.
PPK.
Okay.
He didn't say that. He just in here. He just said it was a Walter pistol.
Isn't that the weapon of James Bond?
James Bond. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. PPK was the yeah. Anyway, so you all end up with minor injuries, and you're gathered around the Christmas table, the kitchen table, loading your guns, getting ready for war again. It's like you didn't give up. You guys are going back at it. And what was the part about you only you can have guns except for convicted felons? And he was talking about you. Is that
he was talking about me. Yeah.
Okay. And he recognized that you and your wife have been fighting this battle for a long, long time.
Right.
But they are now the ones that you're bringing into the fight. You're teaching the next generation how to fight spiritual war, and that's kudos to you. And I think that the message on this one is that the battle belongs to the Lord, and He's going to win it for you.
Yes, I believe that.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think it's an interesting dream, but I think the actionable intelligence in the dream is prepare for war. But you know, when I hear whirlwind to me is a coming justice. It always takes me back, not always, but every time recently that I hear it in a dream, it reminds me of Young Guns 2, where they're pointing the gun. Billy the Kid is pointing the gun at the sheriff, who is crooked as the day is long, and he says, "Reap the whirlwind, Sheriff Brady," and then he hits him right between the eyes and kills him. And it's the idea of removing corrupt law enforcement, corrupt legislatures, corrupt government. And I feel like that is the whirlwind that is already at work in America right now.
Yes.
And that would certainly chase the dragon away concerning some of the things that you shared that you were dealing with.
Well, the Psalm 91 came to me that, to come nigh you and nigh your dwelling, you'll see it, but it won't come nigh you nor your dwelling, or it won't affect you or your family. And that's, I keep me and my family covered constantly by Psalms 91. And as far as the fake military and stuff, I mean, I guess I'm relating this to my practical life. I mean, what's really going on? And, when you have the IRS after you down you, and what they've tried to do, but it didn't work. They tried to get us. They tried to destroy us financially, what you were saying earlier, and it hasn't worked. But not only that, they're a fake. To me, they're a fake organization. What they're doing and how they're doing it is just completely unconstitutional and wrong. And that's why we've been battling for 27 years. They keep trying, and it's I guess it's been my call of life. I don't know. But it's been, the dream like this just encouraged me, because there's been sayings that, I had another prophetic guy. He said he had I don't know if it was a dream or what, he called me up and said, "I just got a word from the Lord." He says, "Your family's invincible." And he just called me out of the blue and made that statement. And, I guess I better be careful what I say over this since this is out in the airwaves. But anyway,
that's what Cody says here. There's a coming battle. You will be covered. No one will die, but some will walk away with a limp. And the idea of the limp comes from the Lord. The Lord allows us to be humbled in a respect.
Yes.
But I believe that, the pseudo military / dragon that is attempting to come against you will not succeed.
Yes.
God has given you the land. Stand your ground, hold on to the land, and pray. I mean, right now it's a spiritual battle.
Yeah, I'll have a couple other dreams to tell that goes along with this. That back when I first got indicted, my 7-year-old son, and I'd be really curious to see what you guys had to say about it. But because it's very revelation oriented. It has to do with this. He had to dream 3 days before my arraignment. And I want to share them with you, because I'd be curious as to how, because all this stuff, and I'm learning. This is one thing I'm learning. Number one is keep yourself humble, Troy. because I can't win this battle. I mean, no single person or people can. This is a spiritual battle. And it's a battle of evil. It's good and evil, and it's going to be God that ultimately walks with us through these battles, and we're going to win. But I forget what I was going to say now.
The dreams are all connected.
Oh yeah, the dreams are all connected, and it's building. And I'm realizing more like Joseph, that when you have that dream, we think that we should see it happening tomorrow or that day, and it doesn't. And when some of these dreams that my children have had and we've had, that was like, 13 years ago when he had them, and I see them playing out now.
Wow.
And I'll have to share them with you on another time.
There was a dream that a man had when he was 7 that his mother wrote down for him, and it actually had to do with 2020.
Wow.
That was like 50 years ago that he had that dream.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing, Troy. I always love having you on, man.
Yeah,
Hey, we
Troy.
appreciate it. Appreciate you guys.
All right. Appreciate you too. Take care.
Yep, you too. Thank you.
All right. Interesting dreams. Warfare. It's interesting to see a lot of, if you're watching, by the way, look and observe the patterns of how God talks to people throughout. There's a lot of similarities a lot of times on a live dream that we have. Let's do Diana L.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. So, I had called in a few weeks ago, and I had the dream about the 3 moons.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So, the dream that I have that I'm going to share with you tonight is actually the first dream that got my attention, where I started writing down my dreams. So, all I can tell you is this dream took place in 2018, but I don't remember what time of year, month, or anything like that. So in this dream, I'm at my grandmother's house and I'm looking out her kitchen window. And when I look out her kitchen window, at the top of the hill, there's a church. And so in the dream, it looks exactly like how it would in the natural. So when I'm looking up the window, there's a church to the left, and over to the right is a road and then a field. And in the field, but up in the sky, there was a bunch of clouds. And then the clouds started to move, and it formed a hand. And then out of the hand, a whole bunch of fireworks started going off. And then I was just like, oh my goodness, Mame, come and look at this. And she came over and she was looking at the fireworks with me. And then she turned around and looked at me and she said, everything's going to be okay. And that's the dream.
Interesting. Sounds like another warfare dream. Neil, what do you got?
Okay, so you're in your grandmother's kitchen, looking out the window, and you see up on a hill, a church on a hill. To the left, to the right is a road and a field. And
Yes.
the clouds start to form and move around, and a hand comes out of the cloud, or it forms a hand.
The clouds form into the shape of a hand.
Okay, and then out of that hand come fireworks.
Yes. And I should mention that this is during the daytime. And typically when you see fireworks, it's at night, so they're more noticeable, but it didn't matter that it was daytime. They were so bright regardless.
And you called grandma over and said, look at this. And she looked at it. And at some point she turns around, looks at you and says, everything's going to be okay.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. So it's a multi-generational thing that skipped a generation. So your grandmother, it skipped your mom and dad's generation, went to you. And there's a connection between you two that's more than just biological. She probably passed something onto you that will make sense to you, and I don't know what it is. But you're looking out the kitchen window. Kitchen is just a place of gathering. That's where we eat. We have conversation. That's a place of fellowship where you really get to know each other. Are you real close to your grandma?
Yes. I was the first granddaughter.
Okay. Kind of thought so. So the window is often the window into the supernatural. It's for we see through a mirror dimly, or see in a mirror dimly, or through a glass darkly. And so is this window looking into the backyard, the front yard, side yard? Do you remember? In the natural, because it's the same in the dream.
Yeah. So, okay. Her house faces, she's got really big, like, bay windows out of her living room, which face a state park right across the street. And then I was looking out of the kitchen window, which faces the road that leads up the hill to an actual church.
Which side of the house?
I mean, I guess you can still see, because the field that was above, or the field that was across to the right of the road, is part of the state park. So I guess it kind of faces the front of the house, and it faces the side.
Okay. So looking out the front is often looking into the future. So you're looking at the road. This is a pathway to the field. And I've heard, and since it's around the church, it's like the fields are ripe for the harvest. So that's the direction you're looking in. That's the view that God is giving you of this area. But the clouds that are forming into a hand, it's kind of like, I was thinking the hand that got formed that wrote out many tekel upharsin. You've been measured twice and found wanting, and you're basically going to be cut off. It's about judgment, but it's not your judgment in this case. I think this is judgment for those around you who may be trying to do you harm. And so when you look out the window and it's just amazing. It's like this massive display of fireworks in military form. That would be, like an artillery attack from the sky, which, it's pretty spectacular. If that's God's hand in the clouds, it's him fighting for you and really putting on a wonderful display that you don't see very often, especially during the daytime, as you said. And so when God looked at you at that, and then looked at you and said, everything's going to be okay. It's like God is the one who's protecting this area, this house, the church that you're overlooking, and the whole community that you're in. So that's an encouraging dream. So whatever you're going through now, God's watching over you and protecting you and fighting for you. Kind of like the whirlwind in the previous dream. That whirlwind came from God. The fireworks that, in Elijah's case, it was the firestorm. And this is kind of like a firestorm, only we use different words for it. So it's kind of cool. That's the second one. So God's fighting for you. So be of good cheer. John,
I think in the broader context too, it's a national level dream. The idea of multi-generational, I really like where you went with that, Neil. But the idea of looking out the front or the side window is the idea of something that's either happening now would be the side window, the front window would be coming soon. So it's a combination of happening now and coming soon. The side.
No, not yet.
Yeah, and I had this dream in 2018, but I feel in my heart that it is meant for today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, if you look at what was happening in 2018, just on the political side, on the national level, that was right in the middle of Trump's administration. And of course, the warfare was already intense with, the Russia collusion and the fake news and the propaganda machine were just in full tilt already. Of course, they were from the beginning in 2016, and I feel like I totally agree with the idea of the hand in the cloud. It represents to me two things. It represents Daniel 4, which is tekel tekel, or mean tekel tekel parsons, which is like Neil said, you have been weighed, you have been measured, you have been found wanting, and this day your kingdom will be required from you. That's where Belshazzar, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, was overthrown that night by Cyrus, king of Persia, and Darius the Mede. Well, it's really interesting because Cyrus of Persia is the one who's obviously Isaiah 45 was written about and who Trump has been compared to over and over again. So it's the idea of these were the ones that plundered the church. They were the ones that went in and they took the instruments and the the furnishings from the temple and brought them back and put them in the temple of their foreign god. And then they pulled them out one night to have a big party, which you could probably imagine what parties in Babylon were like in the royal chambers. And they were pulling out these instruments that were used to worship God with, and they were drinking wine out of them and everything else. And that's when God said, okay, I'm done. I'm done. And a hand appeared and wrote on the wall. But the other thing that it reminds me of, which kind of relates to the timeline of 2018, is I believe it's Elijah, but it's Elijah and his assistant are, it says rain is coming, and he goes, I don't see anything. And he goes up and, more are for us than are against us. And then finally he says, open it. They see the cloud the size of a man's hand. But I think it's also in that same setting, though it might be another setting, where they begin to see the whole armies of angels that are coming to fight on their behalf. And again,
different setting.
It represents the idea of heaven moving on behalf of removing corrupt players on the earth, particularly related again to governmental players, because Belshazzar was a king. He ran the whole country of Babylon. Babylon had come in and taken over Israel, plundered Israel, left Jerusalem completely burned to the ground and tore down their wall, and plundered the temple, and then brought the best of their young men and women to serve in Babylon, which is why Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were there. And so Daniel was the one that interpreted and said, this is what this means. And that very night, the king was dead. So the idea of it's not about the timing of the government in that kind of context is not a direct correlation to what's happening now. It's the idea that when you see the hand of God, something that you determine to be the hand of God in a dream, and God brings up Daniel 4, it has a particular meaning. And it's the particular meaning is heaven sent judgment against political and governmental corruption. And this is something that Dana Coverstone has seen over and over and over in his dreams, was the hand related to the 2020 calendar, and then of course the election, and then it turns into a fist and punches the calendar, and the whole calendar blows up. And it's the whole idea of what happened in 2020. God saw everything. The mainstream media can't lie to God and change his mind. God knows exactly what happened. And he knows everything, as Daniel 2:22. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. Every hidden and attempted cover up and corrupt deed that's happened in our country and around the world, God sees it all. It also reminds me of a dream where we call it the war in Washington, where there's literally the sky is filled with explosions and bombs and bullets and tracers and all kinds of things that look like a bunch of fireworks that are happening because there's a war in Washington, D.C., and the Pentagon's involved and police are involved. And, at one point we thought it may have to do with some of the BLM marches a year or two back. But I think it's actually more than that. I think it could be something that is coming. But it's interesting that your grandma recognized that it's going to be okay. And the fact that you guys were out in the country, which is kind of removed, even though you were seeing the fireworks where you were. It wasn't something for you guys. It was like a show versus like run for your lives, the sky is falling kind of a situation.
Yeah.
So fascinating dream.
Yeah. Awesome.
I like it.
Thank you.
Make sure you tell your grandma.
I will.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Wow.
All right. Theme is set up.
That's right.
God comes to the rescue.
All right. Yolanda.
Hi, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to share my dream.
Yeah. Glad to come up.
Okay, so I'm going to be looking to the side because I'm going to read it. Okay, so I had this dream on July 4th. I was in a small room in which the only person was Nancy Pelosi. She was standing in front of a small desk, looking over some small gifts she received. She didn't seem aware of my presence as I stood there watching and hearing her mumble in frustration at an invitation or tickets. She had gotten to a fighting event, sort of like a boxing event or MMA event, because she said her husband will not allow her to attend. There was a small desk chair in a corner, a couple feet away from the desk. As she sat down, she fell backward. I instinctively said, Lord, manifest yourself. And I started to pray in tongues. Immediately, the air in the room became very thick and my body felt compressed. I actually felt it by the heaviness in the air. There was a tightening around my throat and no sound would come out. I no longer felt my feet on the ground. I knew I had to call in the name of Jesus, but my throat kept being squeezed tighter. I struggled to breathe. And though I tried to mouth the name of Jesus, no sound will come out. I kept struggling to speak out his name as this entity or whatever it was filled the room. Finally, barely audible whisper, Jesus, 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 Messiah, and I woke up.
Wow, that's really interesting. I like the fact that it reminds me of the King of Aram, where you could literally see into the chambers, which, it sounds like she was at the office. It sounds like the private chambers of Nancy Pelosi. And you were seeing what was on her desk and the gifts that she had and what she was reviewing. And then she pulls up these tickets for this fight and says, my husband won't allow me to go to this. But then what happens is there's almost what feels, the way that you describe it, like a demonic presence that's attacking you. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of Star Wars. I mean, it sounds like the Darth Vader treatment where, he goes like this and, just motions that way and it cuts off somebody's airway and picks them up off the ground. And,
wow.
It reminded me of that level of darkness, which of course he is the kind of shining figure of, he's the protagonist on the dark side in Star Wars. Obviously the Emperor is really the leader behind everything that's happening, and he's the one that reports to the leader. But Darth Vader is certainly the guy that goes out and makes everything happen. He's the one that hunts down, the resistance and everything else. And so the idea that you were discovered, it sounds to me almost like what the Bible refers to as an unholy watcher. Somebody else that could see in the spirit from the dark side, that could see what you were doing and was trying to put an end to your life and expose you and, basically suffocate you, take away your voice, take away your breath, and take away your voice. And, and I do feel that there's a lot that has to do with, I don't feel like it's necessarily the spirit that would be behind Nancy Pelosi. But I do think that there is a spirit that is allowed to operate by those who are ignorant of the spiritual warfare in government that is particularly targeting people in the church. I think this whole idea of 87,000 new IRS agents, I can pretty much guarantee you they're going to look at everything that has to do with 501c3s and churches and all of that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that very likely they may look into, because it's been contention before in industry in past administrations like the Obama administration and whatever. They persecuted conservative Christians based on their 501c3 status and many audits. The Green family, the ones that started that own Hobby Lobby and the Museum of the Bible in particular, I think they were audited just about every single year. And I mean it's just crazy, the idea of what that looks like. The MMA fight, I think, is interesting. It represents a fight, but it's a lower level fight that she wouldn't be involved in. And it sounds like, the way that you describe it, it's something that she would like to personally witness. But the authority over her, the technical, I don't know if they run their household like this or not, but the technical head of her household would be her husband. And the way that she says, my husband won't allow me to go to this, sounds like, at least for the purposes of this dream, that he would be in charge in deciding whether she can attend or not. So there's a fight that she wants to be up close and personal. If it was somebody like Nancy Pelosi, we can very much assume that they would be ringside seats So it's like seeing the blood up close and personal and watching two guys tear each other apart. I was part owner of a boxing network, and so I very often would sit ringside and see those fights up close and personal. And it's a spectacle when you're there, when you're not in the crowd, 20 or 50 feet back, when you're right there and you can see what's happening and hear all the sounds, and it's something different. So I think that there is a fight that she wants that she is not going to be granted.
Wow.
And I don't know that her husband represents her husband, but her husband represents the idea of somebody restricting her and telling her. I mean, she's, one of the top leaders of the free world right now. So there's probably not a whole lot of people that tell Nancy Pelosi what to do. But to me, it almost reminds me of the idea of God saying, you're not going to be a part. You're not going to be ringside for this fight.
Wow.
And I think I know what the fight is. I think I know what fight she would want to be involved in personally, that God is not going to give her the pleasure of witnessing or being a part of in any respect. Neil, yeah.
I found this interesting that you had it on the 4th of July, the birthday of the nation that we celebrate. And on birthdays, you get gifts. In this room, Nancy Pelosi is at the desk and she's looking at some small gifts. Maybe not godly gifts, but the ones that she's looking at, the MMA invitation for one is kind of interesting. MMA is cage fighting. And I think, when she says, or her husband tells her that she can't go to it, she's in the cage too. And she's fighting in her own cage. It's almost it's kind of poetic justice. She wants to see others fight in a cage, but she's doing the same fighting in her own cage. And she's in a corner and she falls backwards. Any idea why she fell backwards? Was she pushed, shoved, something trip?
She sat down and the chair immediately fell backward. And when it did, all I could see was like her legs just there. And at the moment that I said, Lord, manifest yourself, and started praying in tongues, the entire time, all I could see was the legs just like almost like these skinny little legs that almost look like something.
Kind of like the Wicked Witch of the West.
That's what it reminded me of. The little legs like that, back just dangling, just sitting there, real skinny, almost looked like they didn't belong to the Bible, more, to her, but more like to the witch. Legs is what came to mind.
Yeah, in that scene, the witch's legs are kind of at the corner of the house. I heard she's backed into a corner, and that's why. I don't know how you get backed into a corner in a round cage, but Nancy Pelosi could probably find a way. So you asked the Lord to manifest it himself, and that's when you felt a compression. At first, I thought it was the Lord's presence that was compressing on you. But
I said, Lord, manifest yourself, and I started praying in tongues.
Right.
And that's, as soon as I started praying in tongues, that's when I felt that compression and that, or on my entire body, and then the squeezing on my throat and my voice not being able to come out. Having no audible sound, even though I was mouthing Jesus, there was no sound.
I agree with John. I've had experienced that in the natural, not my feet going off the ground, but that compression and not being able to talk because something is physically grabbing my throat. And what you did at the end, what you finally whispered out, Jesus, 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 at the name of Jesus, Satan can't stick around. He flees. And that's all it takes. I mean, and you got it out. And that's why they go for your throat, is to cut off your voice so you can't even whisper that name. But I liked John's illustration of Darth Vader lifting that soldier or officer off the ground, while grabbing his throat. I mean, it's the same thing. They want to take away our voice. And in the natural, that's what the government wants to do. They want to take our voice away. So we don't complain about them or we don't speak out against them. And that's kind of the struggle you're going through. I don't know if it's on a personal level, but it's certainly on a national level. I suspect it's also going on with you in a personal level, that somebody is trying to keep you from talking about certain things. I don't know if, your circle of friends, that's the case with people in your life.
The only thing I could think of is families that I tried to talk to them. They say, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. That's the only thing that I've gone through in respect to that.
Yeah. And it's not them who are saying that, it's the spirits that control them. that oppress them. They're not possessed, but the ones that are oppressed by, Satan doesn't want anybody to hear about the gospel, and so keep doing what you're doing. Your voice is there, even though it may seem imperceptible and it's very quiet. Going back to Elijah in the cave, finally what he heard was God's still small voice in the wind outside the cave. It wasn't in the firestorm. It wasn't in the strong wind. It was the whisper of God that's the most powerful and effective that people will hear, including you. That's what we hear. We hear the whisper.
Amen.
That's probably the most effective way God, he could scream at us, but it's just, the way he really talks is in a whisper.
Amen.
So find the place where he whispers to you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah,
Share it with your family.
What Neil, when you talked about her being in a corner, it's, of course, in between rounds, you're sat down. And I feel like she's being sat down, which means she's being restricted. She's being told to sit down and be quiet. And the fight that she wants to win is the fight to take out Trump. That's the fight that she wants to win. And even now, a lot of the whole FBI, Mar-a-Lago thing is, my understanding, is because of the congressional investigation. There's other things in the mix. There's a lot of lawsuits that they're trying to, go at Trump in any way they can right now, because they are absolutely terrified of what most of us see as an inevitable, is the idea of him winning a second term. But I don't think she's going to get a front row seat to that fight, which means she's probably going to be taken out before that happens. Wow. You look at the whole impeachment thing. It was Trump versus Pelosi. Once Trump was in office, she was trying to do everything she could. I think they tried to impeach the president. What was it, like 9 times? And so it was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's never has the American government been so weaponized against one individual person, probably in all of American history. Maybe Lincoln, but most people don't know their history, so that doesn't do anything for most people. But what they've tried to do to Trump and continue to try to do to Trump, just really, it just gives legitimacy to his call and to his cry that the government is corrupt and crooked and needs to be removed. If they would just leave him alone, the guy's not in politics right now. He's out of the game. Let him go away and forget about him and try to change the narrative, but they can't. The media can't, and the government can't, because he looms so large, even though he's not in office, over everything that they're doing. And all it takes is him to send, one little tweet or one little whatever, because he's not on Twitter anymore. And, they go into, full crazy mode, which I think is what's happening. But there's multiple other dreams that we've gotten about Nancy Pelosi, and they're not good for her. They're the idea that she will be removed. And I do believe that she will be removed from power. I believe that it'll happen very, very swiftly. I believe that it will not happen in a time of her choosing, but it will be somebody else that takes her out, and it'll be a forced removal. And I think part of it is, again, there's so much corruption that apparently refuses to be investigated, related to her husband, related to her drinking, related to deal after deal after deal after deal after deal after deal after deal, after abuse of power after abuse of power. And it's going to catch up with her, because God is watching. And what they want to do is they want to keep people quiet. That's why they're censoring people on social media. That's why what the government couldn't do, they've allowed capitalism, they've allowed the free market economy and companies like Facebook and Twitter to do, which is to remove the First Amendment rights of the people. They only do that when they're so absolutely, completely terrified of the truth that they have to shut you up, because it's the only thing left they can do. They know they can't win on the basis of the argument. They know they can't win in the court of public opinion. They know they have to lie and cheat and do whatever manipulation tactics they can to even have a prayer in any election. And so the only hope is for them is to try to shut the vast majority of Americans up. And of course, what they don't realize is, as per history in almost every situation, is what they've done is they've awoken the sleeping giant, and we're never going to go to sleep, and we're never going to be quiet, and they're never going to defeat us.
Amen.
So good dream. I like it.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you.
Yolanda.
Thank you for letting me share. That was deep, and thank you for the explanation.
Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, cool. You almost got me fired up there, Neil.
I did. Sorry.
I know you're.
I'll keep it toned down next time.
Well, Julie's laughing, so we got to have her on next.
All right. Probably going to get you fired up. Can't hear you, Julie.
Your mute button's off, but we can't hear you. Try to fix that, and we'll come back to you. Maybe put on some headphones or something.
I thought you came on just
Here. Let's try again.
Oh, did that work?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
I
Sorry, I had a second mute button on that I forgot about.
Cool.
Okay, so 2 nights ago,
All right.
I had a dream that I'm at a conference with my older brother. And I don't know what the conference is about, but it did seem like it was a limited audience.
What's his name?
His name is Tim.
Tim. Okay.
Okay, so toward the end of the conference, they said, hey, we have a special guest speaker that we just found out that he's here. And so they turned the lights down, and I looked over my right shoulder, and in the doorway, I saw a silhouette of somebody stepping into the doorway, and I was like, that is Trump. That is Trump. And I nudged my brother, look. And he came walking in with his characteristic walk, and it was still dark. And I could tell he had that long black winter coat on. And he walked up toward the stage, and then they turned the lights on and everyone could see. He got up on the stage, and people were with him. And the one person that stood out to me was this tall, really lean guy. I think he had a cowboy hat on, and I knew he was carrying Trump's grandson in his left arm. And the grandson looked like he was 2 to 4 years old. Then Trump gets on the stage, and he says, then he's not in that coat. He's in that shorter coat I think he's worn when he's talked to the military. I don't know. It's one I've seen him in. It's not as a heavy winter coat. And he gets up to speak, and people are standing. And I was like, are we going to give him a standing ovation? And I'm kind of looking around, and I see other people looking around. And then I see this guy decide to sit down, and other people were sitting down. And then behind me, I heard somebody say, stand up. And then other people around are saying, stand up. It was so powerful. I can feel it now. Like, they weren't being mean. They're just like, give him respect. And people did. They stood up. It was so powerful. Oh my gosh, I'm getting shivers talking about it. Anyway, and then it makes me want to cry. And then he says, he's talking about how in the Department of Education, like the bad side wants all this extra documentation that's going to, I think it was 30 pages. It's going to require 30 more pages for people to prepare. And that is just outrageous. And that's all I remember of it. But anyway, it makes me cry though, because it was so powerful. People wanted to respect him. So anyway, that's it.
Sounds like the return of Trump.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's interesting. So I heard everything you said, but you mentioned there were a group of people with him on the stage. Did you say who that
As he was getting to the stage, I saw there were other people with him. I didn't notice them when he was walking up to the stage.
Okay.
But they didn't seem like Secret Service or anything. I couldn't really tell who all of them were. The one that really stood out to me was this, like I said, tall, very thin man with, I think, a cowboy hat on, and I knew he was carrying Trump's son. And he could almost step onto the stage without taking the steps because he was so tall.
Did you recognize him?
No, I did not recognize any of them. And I think they were by him on the stage, but they weren't prominent as far as standing out.
How tall was this guy? Was he taller than Trump? Trump's like 6'4"? 2, 6'4"?
Oh, I would say he was. I'm very bad at estimating height, but
Okay.
I would say he was.
Is that the way that you describe him? What comes to my mind is, yeah, exactly, Abraham Lincoln.
Oh,
Do you think it's possible that it could have looked like Abraham Lincoln?
it's possible. He had on blue jeans, I think. So he wasn't like no top hat or anything like that, but it could be.
But a top
And I
hat.
didn't see him from the front.
You said he had a cowboy hat on, right?
Yeah.
So he did have a hat on. And I think it was a cowboy hat, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
That's kind of a guess. It wasn't, I don't know. I think a top hat would have stood out differently. I think it was more like a cowboy hat. Almost as I'm talking, it kind of reminds me of that Curious George book with the man in the yellow hat.
Okay.
Maybe a hat like that. And how that guy is tall and thin. But that just came to my mind while I was talking. It wasn't part of the dream.
Yeah. That's interesting. A bunch of people heard Lincoln, but
it could be because it was kind of that build.
Yeah. Well, I think it's do you know what the conference was that when you were going with your brother, did you have any idea it was a political conference or that Trump might be there or anything like that? Or what did you
No idea that Trump would be there. I didn't know what the topic was, but when Trump talked about education, it seemed like that was related to the topic of the conference.
Okay. Interesting. What do you get, Neil?
Well, were you invited to this conference?
Yes, it was almost like it was by invitation only, like a small group were.
You're in a very select group of people in this dream. You've been selected, you've been chosen out of others, you've been set apart to attend this. And so the fact that you don't know the person that's going to be the guest speaker, and even the people in the venue didn't know that he was coming, did they? It sounded like, oh, by the way, we just found out that we have a guest speaker. So the purpose of it was, it's kind of like one of those things that pastors fear, where they're up there to give a sermon and all of a sudden the Holy Spirit changes it. It's like, oh, by the way, you've got a different one that I want you to do. And so now you've got a different person giving a different message. So whatever message was going to be given in this conference, it's completely changed because somebody more important is about to step up. And so he comes out of the darkness, lights are off. He's silhouetted in the doorway, coming through a doorway over your right shoulder. The right shoulder is the shoulder of government. And that's also the shoulder that the women of the time used to carry water on, not on their heads. They used to carry it on their right shoulder. Anyway, so he walks in. The black winter coat might be a timestamp of what time of year that this is going to happen. Sometime it's not during the summertime.
Right.
So it's potentially, I don't know I would really hope it's going to happen this winter, before we have to have another election. This is all going to get resolved. So he mounts the stage with others it's not his normal Secret Service people. Apparently he doesn't need it. He's protected by somebody else. So he mounts the stage, and the tall, lean guy, whoever he is, when you explained it, I thought it was Eric, his son. So it would have been, from that perspective, it'd be father, son, and grandson. So it'd be 3 generations on, if that's him. If it's not, if it's Abraham Lincoln or somebody else, then it's support from the past and looking to the future in the grandson. But then he changes coats and he's talking. You said he's kind of dressed the way he talks to the military. This is
I think that's where I've seen that coat. It's more like tighter around the hips, and
like
it's
a bomber
kind of
jacket.
Yes.
Like a leather bomber jacket.
Yes.
Well, he's about to bomb the people that took him out of it. He's about to return the favor. That's what I hear. So the people are standing and they don't know what to do with him. It's kind of like half of them are everybody's standing initially, and you're wondering, are we going to clap for this guy? Because this is really kind of an important person. He is the president of the United States.
Right.
And some people sit down. We had another dream where people sit down or are told to sit down and then told to stand up. But out of respect, everybody stands up eventually, right? Which is,
well, the people in the middle especially were sitting down, which is interesting. I didn't think about that, but I can't tell what was happening in the far end, but on my side of the stage, mainly we were still standing, and I saw this one guy kind of looking like, what should I do? And he started sitting down, and right away this person behind me said, stand up. And then all around they're going, stand up, and people stood up. They responded to people saying respect him.
At the risk of always equating Trump to Jesus, I heard the song stand up for Jesus.
Oh, wow.
Trump is not Jesus. Okay.
No,
just want to be clear to everybody out there. I'm not saying that he's a deity. He's not. He's a human. He's fallible. He's the president of the United States. So Trump then starts talking about how the Department of Education wants extra documents, 30 pages worth, to be prepared for. What was the purpose of those documents? Is that just for people that have
whatever they normally would have to submit, and they being like public schools, I think, they would have to prepare that much more.
I heard 30 pieces of silver.
Mm.
So the Department of Education is sold out. They're they're a mess. And that's not a revelation by anybody, but it's,
right.
They've taken money from special interest groups, from pharmacy, big pharma, from everybody, and they're no longer about education. They're about the disinformation more than information. It's not about education. It's about money, follow the money. People get put into different classes because the teachers get paid for it. It's like go into your AP classes, and they get extra money for each one of those students who attends those, even though kids might not even have the inclination to be a part of that. So I think that's it's pointing to that. Are you in education now, or were you?
I have been, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this kind of hits a little bit more home to you because of the topic.
Mm-hmm.
So are you in education anymore now?
No, and when I was in higher education, so it was a private school.
Oh, okay. So you might have been shielded from the Department of Education of the yeah. So I think the education of the United States, this is kind of what we're talking about. It started at a low level, and it continues up through college, and then the media takes over our education. What's been the message that gets started in kindergarten, once you leave the public sector, now you get to have the joy of being educated by the media. And I think this is the part where it's not only the Department of Education, but it's the media also that have been sold out and took their 30 pieces of silver to betray the nation.
Yes.
And that's why Trump is wearing his bomber jacket midway through his speech, I think. So anyway, that's what I got.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. I felt like it was a process for him appearing to walking to the stage, other people joining him, walking up on the stage, and then the lights coming up, which is like full exposure, and then addressing the crowd. So I feel like we're somewhere in between. I do feel like the coats represent a change of seasons. So I thought that was interesting. Y'all picked up on that as well. I do think the guy carrying the grandson is interesting. I hope it's not Lincoln, because I didn't like what I thought of when I thought of Lincoln.
No, right.
But
it didn't strike me like that in the dream, and it didn't strike me that it was a family member, but it seemed like he was important, maybe to the family.
Yeah.
And I see what Gianna wrote about the George magazine.
Yeah.
And JFK Jr. So I don't know.
Well, I think it's an interesting symbol. It's definitely one, to dig into and look at further. would be to find out. Well, that would be one of the key things to find out is who is the person that's carrying the grandson, and which grandson is it? The son of which child? You know,
Mhm.
I think would be interesting. But if that's not abundantly clear, it certainly at least represents the idea of two generations of the Trump family. But if it does represent a son, and I could see how Eric would fit into kind of the description of the man in the yellow hat. It represents the idea of three generations of the Trump family, though it
Mhm.
doesn't seem to be a clear symbol that that's what it's saying.
I think it's
Right.
figurative. Tall and lean. I think that's indicative of what Trump is going to come in with. He's going to lean out the government. It's not going to be all the fluff and fat that it had before.
Mhm.
Less government is better. And I think
Mhm.
this tall, lean guy is representative of what his future staff and his intentions are with how the government's going to look in the future.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see if something comes up that we all go, hey, that must be what that meant.
It's coming. You'll see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
It'll all
you.
make sense soon.
Thanks, Julie. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
Yep.
Interesting. People are
Yeah.
still dreaming about Trump. Lots and lots of dreams.
Yeah, it doesn't go away.
Doesn't go-
There's a reason for it.
Yeah.
God doesn't want us to forget about him.
Sonia. You're
Hey,
muted.
Sonia.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are
Hi.
you?
Good. So I actually have a dream that my husband just dreamt yesterday. So I'm just going to read it off on my phone here for you guys.
Okay.
So his name is Josh. So Josh was sitting with a homeless guy on the side of a beach. He was sitting on a park bench, and this homeless man said that he didn't care to die, and Josh was really there just to help him. And he was telling him that he should fight and shouldn't give up. But then there were these huge water waves that hit his tent and destroyed it, and then brought it out to sea. And the homeless man, he wanted to stay there, and I guess he got swept into the sea too. And then emergency sirens started to go off. His first instinct was survival and to get his family together. So he, I guess he went to a store to get a phone charger because his phone was almost dead. And then the dream fast forward, and I guess he and his son Elijah were in this this mall like structure, and everybody was going crazy there. But I guess we were in this dream millionaires, and there was like an extraction site there, and that's where everybody that got like these tickets to this extraction site were supposed to go to. And you walked through the screen, and like nobody, most people that were going crazy there, they didn't know about this place, but there were people that worked there that it's like they could scan you and like in a crowd, and then they would like move you out of the crowd and take you to this hallway where it was like this big building, but he described it as a city on like train tracks. Like I don't know if you've seen those buildings in like China, but like they hold like hundreds of thousands of people, and it's kind of like its own city in this huge building. But he said that yeah, there's
Oh no.
There you are. You're back.
um
You lost you when you were talking about the city on the train tracks.
so only people. One second here.
Oh.
There you are.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so then he found our dorm. So I guess we had a dorm there, and he left his son Elijah there. And at this point, he actually woke up, and he was up for like an hour, and then he fell back to
I
sleep.
was at 6:30, and then I went
Yeah.
back to sleep at like 7:30.
Yeah, he woke up at 6:30, and he went back to sleep at around 7:30, and the dream continued. And once he started dreaming again, he called me, and I brought up Noah, his older son, and I was talking about how we should get Noah to this spot, and all his kids were older at this point. Their age right now is 11 and 7, and he was saying that they look older, like teenagers. And so he gave Noah's mom a call, and because he was with his mom at that point, and he pretty much told him that you can either go with your mom and die or come with us and live, because he only had 4.5 million in his bank account, and it was $1 million per ticket. And so we went to get Noah, or I went to get Noah, and then we met up together. We were showed to our dorm, our bed, and all that stuff. And in this building, there was this huge conference room. Like, the city was kind of like a globe. Like, you could see windows like that just surrounded it like a globe while it's moving on these train tracks. And we were in the conference room, and then we could see the view at the building, and literally, like, the whole world was in chaos. Like, there were meteors coming out of the sky, and earthquakes, and there was a haze that it looked like literally the end of the world. And but we were safe in this this spot, or this globe thing.
It was like
I think he's disconnecting. Can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, there's dark haze, train tracks. So there's a couple little details in there, but I'm just gonna skip through it because I know it's a little bit long. But we were just checking out the whole place, and fast forward to the end. So I guess there were people outside dancing, and Josh was saying, "Hey, like everything seems to be fine. Like, do you want to go dance outside?" And we were like, "Cool, sure." So we're going to find this exit.
This was outside the globe.
Outside the globe, not inside the globe.
We were driving by.
So we were in this city on train tracks, looking for the exit to go join these people dancing, and it's like this. There's like cobblestones or steps that were like going into place as we were walking in front of us. And then this guy, like, Josh had to stop me, like, protect me from going, because this guy zipped past me and went, like, he was trying to, I guess he went ahead of the tiles, and he fell and like got crushed as they kept filling in the spaces.
Me and you
yeah,
me and you like held each other, and then we ran back.
Yeah, we ran back, decided not to do that because of what happened, because I was really upset about it. And then what was after that part?
You went with the kids.
Yeah, I went.
You were upset.
Yeah, I went with the kids because I was upset. And then Josh went to the conference room to look outside some more. And this guy beside him said,
like, I was watching the sky and the meteors and all.
Yeah, he was watching everything. And this guy comes up beside him with a big raspy voice and says, "I wonder when everyone's going to admit that Joe Biden did this or had a part to do with this." And he said, "Probably when everyone's dead." And then the dream ended.
Yeah, I woke up right after that.
Yeah, and that was it.
Oh. Interesting. There's a lot of stuff there. It's obviously a apocalyptic dream about coming. What it sounds like is judgment, because it's coming from heaven. The idea of meteors, the idea of this massive wave washing people away and things like that sound like more like acts of God than they do anything that is forced by a military attack or something that's man-made. I thought it was interesting, as a couple of people have said, the names of the children, Joshua, Elijah, and Noah. Of course, Joshua means salvation, but he's also a fearless leader. And Elijah, the whole idea of the whirlwind comes from the story of Elijah being taken up in the whirlwind. And then Noah, of course, with the worldwide flood. So again, the idea representative of judgment or supernatural judgment, or God moving on behalf of the nation. What I thought was interesting is you said you were in like a city that was like on a train and on railroad tracks, on tracks. So the idea of being on tracks is the idea that the outcome is fixed. You can't steer like you can a car and go someplace else. If you're on train tracks, you can only go ahead, and you're on that fixed course. Like literally the course has been set. There's no way around it. The only way is straight ahead. But then at another point, you're in a place where you guys are walking and the cobblestones are literally forming right under your feet. And as long as you don't get ahead and fall in, the cobblestones will continue to, reminds me of, your word is a lamp unto our feet and a light into our path. It's the idea that literally God is making a way before you as you walk. It's not like, oh, well, hey, there's a mile ahead of us of sidewalk. It's like, no, it's literally as you pick your feet up to walk, the road is built underneath you, which is the idea of supernatural provision, supernatural safety, supernatural protection. So there's a lot of themes in here related to the idea of a coming judgment, which we've seen a lot. There's a lot of people having dreams like this, whether they're earthquakes or they're even things from heaven, like meteors, a lot of tidal waves, tsunamis, things like this. This dream sounds like it has just about everything in it. And then there's this idea of escapism, that the rich are literally trying to buy their way out of what's happening and trying to get on board or have some area that they could go where they would be safe. But at the very end, the path that you were walking on was supernaturally forming under your feet, which represents the idea of staying in step with the Spirit. Don't get in front of them, because if you do, you kind of fall off and then get kind of crushed underneath the road that is being built before you. But those are the main themes that I got. Neil, what'd you get?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. It's like all the apocalyptic scripture verses were thrown into a blender and then out popped this dream. It's like you hit on just about every single one of them. One of the things that I thought about was, the millionaire extraction point and the flood. There was a movie a while back, and I don't remember the name of it, but they built 3 arcs, and it was just before the world was flooded. And it was just basically for millionaires who could get on the ark. And the thought was, why can't we put more people on it? And it seems like you guys have a ticket to this. What did it cost? $1 million to get a ticket or something? Yeah, it's kind of like it's the exact same thing as this movie. I think it was with Miles Teller or something. Anyway, it was pretty poorly done, but you'd probably like it based on this dream. You might get some things out of it, because God speaks movie. I don't know if you knew that, but he does. So you get to the end, and I like the thought, John, that you had, that it's on it's this globe on a train track, but this is a global problem. Even though they cite Joe Biden, it's his fault, and you kind of think nation. This is a global problem that's facing us. It's not just the nation. It's a global catastrophe that's about to come. But judgment is coming, and you're all safe. You're in a safe spot, no matter what is happening on the outside of the globe. And this globe seems like a microcosm of the bigger world. You're in a safe place. God's going to protect you in there. And then it passes. At some point it passes, and you're able to walk outside and celebrate because people are dancing. So it's a catastrophe, but there's a good ending to it. This is something that's going to pass, and it will be resolved. I don't know how quickly it will, but it seems to get resolved fairly quickly. Once you get to the spot where the globe stops, whatever's happening on the outside, it's done. Then the guy at the end points to whose fault it is, or who he thinks is his fault, Mr. Biden, which I probably agree with him. So interesting dream. There's a ton.
Yeah, I don't even follow politics. That was random.
I think it's interesting too, though, that they would blame Biden, because that is certainly the narrative that's being pushed.
He's the fall guy.
But yeah, it's clearly not. I mean, if you look at his ability to be able to handle even a news conference, it's clear the guy's not in charge of running the country. It just isn't. So there's a group of people that are more devious and more sinister than him. They want to paint it off as being incompetent, and that's something that, again, the ignorant right, forgive me, but a lot of people on the right who are not really paying attention, they continue to repeat this echo chamber and this narrative that the left is putting out, that Joe Biden's incompetent. Duh. I mean, we all know that he's not the one making the decisions that are being made. And when are we going to hold the people accountable who are not elected, whether real or pretend, and they're not in a position to govern the country, and they're the ones that are actually making the decisions. It's literally a shadow presidency, and there's a lot of weird stuff that's happening now. I do believe that the people who are in charge, who they're trying to make that who Biden is a figurehead for or a puppet for, could be the people behind a lot of it. But I don't think that, again, that they're causing this. I believe that they're the cause because of the evil and the corruption and the wickedness that God has said, like the beginning of the session where we had the dream about the hand of God. God has said, you've been weighed, measured, and found wanting, and I'm going to rain destruction down from heaven. And we know in scripture that he will keep the righteous and the elect safe. And so it's the idea that there's going to be, whether it's fireworks or whether it feels like the end of the world, there's going to be things, I believe, in coming days soon, that it's going to be thing after thing after thing. It's going to be so hard to even keep up with the amount of drama that's happening, because there's going to be exposure, and a lot of it's probably going to happen all at once, and things are going to shift, and they're going to shift very, very dramatically in a good way, but quickly. And then there's going to be the demise of the wicked that is not going to be good, and it's going to be very traumatic for a lot of people who put their hope in leaders who they're going to find out were what some people have been saying all along, that these guys are not good people. But what's going to happen is God is going to provide the way of escape. God is going to provide the dorm. He's going to provide a place for you and your family and your children and the next generation. But he's also going to build a road or a pathway underneath your feet to keep you safe.
Interesting.
So, fascinating dream, man.
Yeah, it's an epic dream.
There's so much more to it too. I just
Yeah, I kind of figured.
we'd be sitting
right.
here for hours talking about it. It was kind of mind blowing. I just woke up. I let her know right away, and it was vivid too. Like I remembered from start to finish, and there was that gap in between where I woke up and then fell back to sleep, and it picked up right where it left off, like it never even ended. And yeah, it was quite the experience, that's for sure.
Do you normally dream as vividly as this one was?
I had one more vivid dream like 2 or 3 months ago that it was pretty insane as well. But this one just hit home really hard for me because
of the children.
Because of the children. Yeah, and there was more that, like, my siblings as well. I was thinking of them. My parents ended up staying back, going down with the ship. They said they weren't coming, and they actually donated their wealth for us to all be safe in this globe. And yeah, that was really stressful. My brother actually, by then there's traffic and everybody was going, it was chaos, so you literally couldn't drive. And so I was worrying about my little brother, and this guy strapped himself up with a harness to a big huge drone, and he flew himself, and he was controlling the drone with his phone, and landed right in front of me. And he was like, well, this is one way to beat traffic. So there was a little funny part in there. But yeah, it was quite the dream. But the other part,
if you have an opportunity, write the whole thing down. I mean, it sounds like it's going to take a couple pages worth, but it'd be worth it to capture every detail that you can remember. Because when God gives dreams, he puts things in for a reason. There's not a single element of the dream that you saw that is there randomly.
Yeah,
everything has a meaning and a purpose for being there. We may not know it right up, but capture it.
Yeah.
And you can send it into us at dream@spiritualintel.com.
I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have vivid dreams. Like it's like once in a while, but when they happen, they're like, there's a lot of detail to them that is hard to really, what?
Yeah. No,
It's hard to organize it, where I'm like if, for example, even the beginning, like I'm helping this guy, her and I, we help people in our city, and it was like that's what I was doing. He was stressing out. Everybody knew something was coming. They just didn't know what. And he had a tent on the side of the a beach, and he just was ready to be wiped away with the waves. And I was telling him, like, come on, man, it's okay. Like just fight and come up here. And then I brought him up higher up on the beach, and then his tent just got devoured by water. And then right after, the sky started going black, and then the alarm went off, the big siren, and then I went in survival mode, walked away, and I tried to get him to come, but he was just waving goodbye to me. So I felt like that meant something too. I didn't know what.
Well, some people are gonna
Yeah.
some people are gonna follow the message that Jesus has, and some aren't. You know, you can try. You're not the one who's going to save people. It's Jesus, and if he say he's got him, he's got him. It's not you do whatever you can, and it sounds like you did everything you could to convince this guy or to bring him along. It was his choice not to.
True.
And I think the fact that you woke up for an hour and went back to sleep and it jumped in right where it was before, this is a really important concept that God wanted to get to you. It was so important that you went back to sleep and he gave it to you that night. Some people, it goes over days, but since he gave it to you in the same night, even after being awake for an hour, it's pretty important. I would, as I said, capture this as much of it as you can, as soon as you can, because dreams are fleeting. But it sounds like this one was a sticker. This one's in your head like a movie. Like if you could film your brain right now, it would come out exactly as you saw it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My sister said I should write it all down and actually try to do something with it, because like I kept her on an emotional roller coaster as I was talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't be the first person who had a dream that became a movie.
Where are you guys from?
Dartmouth, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I thought I detected that little Canadian accent. My family from Canada.
Yes, nice.
Yes.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
well,
well,
thank
thank you
you
for
so
sharing.
much.
Amazing dream. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. I was working on the computer. I heard her finally talking. I was like, I gotta pitch in on this. Like, you guys are saying some good stuff. So I'm glad you guys could let me know of somewhat of what was going on. Yeah, I got a lot to think about. But I'll definitely write it down and we'll send it over. And I'm looking forward to seeing what else is in there. So
Cool.
All
Thank
right.
you. I appreciate you guys.
Okay.
Well, God bless.
Yeah.
All right, take care. Bye. Wow. Lot there. That's amazing.
Seems like that was post-transfer of wealth dream when they became millionaires.
Could be.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, Kaylee Frazier.
Hi. I apologize ahead of time. My internet has been going in and out. So I got, just before I had this dream, what I believe to be 4 different confirmations. But before I share those with you guys, I'll share the dream first, and then you let me know what you think, okay? Thank you. Okay. So this dream was on May 29th of 2022, this past year. And it was interrupted. So the dream began where I was on a horse-drawn carriage with a man named Poe. It was Poe, Edgar Allan Poe. We had been riding on the roof of this horse-drawn carriage, like the wooden kind of roof, so it wasn't canvas. But we had either fallen off or we were escaping. We were handcuffed together, and it was his left wrist who was handcuffed to my right wrist. So he was to my right. After we'd fallen off of the roof of this horse-drawn, carriage, or we jumped off, we were laying down in the middle of the road on like a soft dirt road, and Poe was like knocked out or sleeping from the fall, but I was awake. Another horse and carriage went around us, like they went to the right and around us. They didn't run us over, obviously, and then they stopped in front of us, and the driver got down and started walking and approaching me and Poe. and my eyelids were fluttering like in the soft dirt as I was trying to look up, and I was being careful. Like I was trying to look up to see who it was who was approaching us, but I was pretending like I was sleeping for our safety. And for a second, when I was laying down, I was brought up and I was given an aerial view that came around the back of the horse-drawn carriage. And for a moment, I saw that the horse-drawn carriage had a wooden sign painted on the roof called the Raven. As I picked up my head to greet the person who had stopped and was approaching us on foot, that's when there were like 2 tomcats outside the window that started fighting and woke me up. So,
Wow. Really interesting.
and Edgar Allan Poe was a weird bird. So I'm like, he was
Yeah.
famous after death. And so, you know, just some.
Let's quote the Raven.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And I bought it since this dream. So I have that poem, and I'm doing something, I think, that I'm supposed to do with this. But I want to hear your guys' take on it.
Well, it sounds a little dark, as the Raven is, really dark.
Yep.
I don't even remember. He might have been, I don't know if he was I felt like he was a friend from high school, but that doesn't sound right. But anyway, I knew of a guy that committed suicide by stabbing himself to death with a knife while quoting the Raven.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say the Raven, that's what comes to my mind is like, and when you said Poe, I immediately thought of Raven. Did you share this dream somewhere recently? Did you put this
when you were live the other day, I was waiting and I just posted it in the comments, but I didn't see, I haven't seen any other comment. I haven't gone back to look and see what anybody said.
Okay, because I remember hearing Poe and Raven, and I was just like, man, I heard that recently. I haven't heard that in years, but yeah, I think it's really interesting, the idea that you riding along with him on the top of this stagecoach. And then are you in an accident? Is that what causes you to be laying in the middle of the register? You were riding and then you're laying
we were on top of it, and we either jumped off or we fell off together, and he was knocked unconscious. So he was like asleep right next to me. And he was dressed in like the 1800s clothing. This whole setting was in the 1800s. I didn't, you don't see yourself in dreams, but yeah, we either jumped off and we were escaping somewhere, or we were just caught a ride on this roof. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Did you eventually recognize the other man who came from the other carriage?
No, and that's right
Or
as
his
I was
intention?
lifting my head up, the cats woke me up outside my bedroom window, and I haven't had a dream since then about it.
So you didn't know what his intentions were either?
No, I didn't know if he was safe or if he was a friendly or not.
Right. Edgar Allan Poe was a West Point cadet.
Interesting.
He left after the first year.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
And he jumped. He got out. Yeah.
He did. Wasn't for him. It's not for everybody.
Was for you?
I'm a prior veteran too, so.
Well, thank you for your service.
You're a prior veteran?
Thank you. I mean, I'm a veteran. I'm a prior service.
What
yeah, I
service
wonder if
were
that
you
has anything to do with it. I didn't think about that. So I was a surge tech in the Air Force. So, if you've been to like FOBs and stuff overseas, I was deployed, and I went to FOB Ghazni, and I actually enjoyed it. A lot of people don't enjoy the smaller COPs or FOBs, but I thought it was awesome.
Did you have anything to do with the Raven drone?
No. We work with Polish a lot.
Okay.
White Eagle was actually the Ghaznis, was like their commander.
Yeah, the part where you said you went up into the air, it was like you left your body and you went way up into the air, and you could see carved in the roof in a wooden whatever, the word Raven.
Yes.
Are you a Game of Thrones fan?
I did see that. Yes. And then
you remember the three-eyed raven?
Like that.
You remember the three-eyed raven?
Yes.
Okay, he was able to see through the eyes of the raven. It was kind of like what you were doing, looking down on this. It seems like God is giving you a sight, also through this stream that you may have a sight that's different than what you think, that you can see what other people can see from great heights or from places where you wouldn't normally be. So your body is on the ground, eyes are fluttering, but you're up in the air looking down. So it's
For a moment,
it's like
just my eyes see it.
yeah. And somehow you're linked, you're handcuffed to Poe. Which
He's
is
to
kinda,
my right. We're handcuffed together.
right.
Yeah.
So there is a link between you. I'm curious whether there's a bloodline link with you guys.
Okay, oh my gosh, I just got chills on my arm when you said that. And this dude, as you know, this fool married his first cousin, so I'm like not excited about that. So I wanted to tell you real quick, right? Like, oh, come on, no, I don't know. My mom's side, my great grandpa was actually been on my mom's side. There's Cherokee and French. It's I don't know what Poe was, but can I tell you the confirmations real quick and see if you guys get anything from it?
Before you say that, do you know which region of the country your Cherokee relative was from?
I know that they ended up in Oklahoma, so I do think the trail. I think some of my ancestors on my mom's side went on the Trail of Tears, to
Did
Oklahoma.
they start in North Carolina? Did they start in North Carolina? So they started in North Carolina.
I don't know,
because that's a very fascinating.
I don't know because my mom's.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mom's biological grandpa, we only met him like 5 years ago, and then he died 2 years ago. So I really wanted to go back. Mom was by a different man, and he's awesome. That's my grandpa. But I actually met my mom's biological grandpa, and me and my mom looked like him more than anybody else. So it was strange, but I didn't get to know the family history at all. Like, we just know that's where the Cherokee and French is from on my mom's side.
Cherokee have a very interesting lineage that goes back to Joseph, perhaps. They have a DNA marker there's only 2 people groups in the world that have it. It's a T marker. The Cherokee have it, and Egyptian Jews are the other group that have it. So your heritage may be
all over
very.
my body when you just said that. I just got chills all over, and I'm not trying to be ooed about it and just.
No, it's a pretty it's a pretty fascinating lineage.
Yeah, it is. It is. Do you know what you were wearing in the dream?
No clue. I didn't see my buddy. I love her. When we were on me in 1890 when how the dream was very tall. But the conversations I were not like this. So maybe I don't know. This is really started. I thought this was gonna be. I thought this happened to right.
Huh.
Oy.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1890s setting. That's about all we heard from that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, your internet's rocking out.
Yeah, your internet's going wacky.
Yeah.
I think it's the idea. There you go. That's better. I think it's the idea of
there. Okay.
There could be a generational thing. I would definitely look into the generational side. The idea of being handcuffed. Poe is probably not somebody that most people would want to be handcuffed to just because of his dark history and who he was and, the things that he battled with and all of that. But I feel like you're like the antithesis of that. You're like the light to his dark, and the idea that you're able to literally go up and see represents the idea of the seer gift. like where he passes out or where he's knocked unconscious and he's literally not able to function. You're in like this trance because your eyelids are fluttering, which happens sometimes in a trance, or at least it signifies a trance, particularly in movies. And the idea of possibly a passage of time, certainly, as like Cody said here, but also the idea of being able to then travel out, almost out of your body, and being able to go and see something from a position that's more in line from you that God would have. The idea of being able to go higher and see further.
Okay.
So rise above the danger. And even though you were laying in the center of the road and this other stagecoach was coming, it also represents the idea of being destaged. It's like being dethroned or upstaged because you were on top of the stagecoach. So the idea of being upstaged and then dethroned or destaged, it also represents, it also reminds me of a dream that Dana Coverstone had called the Conestoga Wagon Dream, which means something to us. It probably doesn't mean anything to you, but it's just the idea of a shift happening, a massive shift. Because in that dream there was an explosion and people ended up in the middle of the road as well. And so I feel like that's what God is saying, is that there's a part of your generational bloodline that you need to research, and you need to look at literally what you're tied to, and you need to realize that God has given you a seer ability to see further and farther than people that you're tied to could, which could mean undoing some generational bloodlines, some bloodline curses, some generational garbage that has been in your bloodline because of people that you may have inadvertently been tied to through a bloodline. You know, that's the whole idea of the
Okay.
handcuffs. You don't get to pick your family.
Yeah.
Let's hear your confirmations.
So totally different, but that's awesome. And I have been curious about, just because my grandpa was adopted, my great grandfather was adopted. So I've always been curious about where we really come from, you know. The 4 confirmations I got were actually 2 of them were before I had the dream. So the day before I had the dream, there's a show my husband used to watch Altered Carbon. And so in this show, there's a and he got a whole
She's breaking up real bad. Let's see if we
Yeah.
can, if she can move around a little bit and get some better Wi-Fi, I can try to bring her back in. Let's see.
Is this
Yeah,
better?
that's better. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, let me try going outside. Oh, there's music out there. It's so hard. Okay, so in the show, Poe is an AI like character, and so I was thinking about that character because he was my favorite character in the show was Poe, and that the hotel that they're staying in this show is called the Raven. So that was like a day before I had the dream, and the show just came to my mind when I was doing dishes. And then the next day, my husband Ryan told me that I need to write my book. And then the day after that, I watched an interview on Elijah Streams, and it was with a girl who she started dreaming. Her whole life changed. She was a previous accountant, and God got a hold of her, and she said there was a homeless man that she went and gave like some snacks to, and the homeless man looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You're a poet." And when she walked across the street, she turned back and he was gone. So she thinks that that was an angel, you know, sent from the Lord. And since then, she said within like one day, she wrote her first book, and it was published and like was amazing. So that night, so when I heard that on Elijah Streams, all the hairs on my body. So I think like this is, you know, I don't know how the Holy Spirit manifests to other people, but I feel like when you were talking about the lineage thing, the Cherokee thing, I got goosebumps, and this isn't me like deeply thinking about stuff. So I think a physical sign, because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
My hairs on my head will stand up. So the girl talk about, and that night was when I all that, or did it cut out?
We got it. We got what you said. I think God is saying you need to get better Wi-Fi. You're living in the 1800s
Somewhere in the dream.
Wi-Fi, and it's causing you to fall off
I
the
live with my
stage.
parents right now, so it's not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I think I still believe what we're saying, which is the idea of look into your generational bloodline, look at what you're tied to. I do think if God is calling you to write a book, I would absolutely do that. Is your book a book of poetry?
I was gonna do a reverse of the Raven.
Oh,
So
well, there you
instead
go.
of the Raven, I was gonna write, the dove, and it was gonna be about dreams and how God gave me this dream. But I'm doing it very carefully so that it's not an obviously followers book, that it would catch the attention of people like read the Raven.
Yeah.
So that was my take from it.
I like it. I like the book and research your generational history and get back to us.
Awesome.
All right.
Get new Wi-Fi.
Thank you. I will.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Caleb.
We got a hard stop today, so we got time for one more, and we got a bunch of people that have been waiting for a while.
Yeah.
You pick, Neil.
Need a short one.
Who's got a super short one? Raise your hand.
Raise hands. Mary Susan and Gina.
All right, let's do Mary Susan.
Okay. Hey, Mary Susan.
Can't hear you.
Hear you.
Can't hear you. Nope, can't hear you. Work on getting that fixed.
Get
and
Gina.
we'll come back to you. Sorry about that. Gina.
Hey.
Hey, how are you? I'm
fine. How are you?
Good.
I actually lost my internet and went out and I wrote it in the, I'm just going to do this one. It's really short. It's something I heard yesterday morning when I woke up, or the 15th, whenever that was. I heard, watch for Trump number 3, watch for Trump number 4, watch for Trump number 5.
3, 4, 5. Okay.
I have 3, 4, 5. Just they're not any, as far as personal numbers, nothing like one's has to do with internet, not even my internet, my son's, and in my insurance. That it's just random numbers that, but
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have an idea. But.
Well, 4 and 5 sounds interesting. To me, it's like the idea of 3 terms for 45, which constitutionally is a little bit difficult unless Trump came back midway through this term and then also served an additional term. Then he would get 3, but not 3 full terms. But that's what came to mind. What did you get, Neil?
Wrestling with watch. It's almost, I heard timepiece. So a watch for Trump. Not necessarily view Trump, like look at him, but it's watch the time for Trump. But the rest of it, I don't know.
3, 4, 5.
Possibly it might not be just Trump, but maybe he finishes out or does a 3rd term, and then the 4th and the 5th is another Trump.
Or it has to do with his children.
Mm-hmm. It could be one of his kids in a 4th or a 5th term, or well, I don't know, but it's just what I heard when I woke up.
Well, yeah, the idea of watch for Trump 3, watch for Trump 4, watch for Trump 5 is different than 45. So it could mean kids and grandkids. It could be indicative potentially of a political dynasty in America.
3rd, 4th, 5th generation.
Well, either that or just, 3, 4, 5. Could be 2 terms, could be him. It could be a third one after that. A third Trump term could be, Eric, and then fourth and fifth. I mean, who knows? There's so many talented people in that family that could certainly run for office on a national level. But I don't know. I don't know what the desires of all of them are, if they're even care to be involved. But the idea of watch for can mean several things. One, it can mean the idea of paving the way in spiritual warfare, is watching for them, keep watch over them as like a watchman, or as like in a military standpoint, overwatch, pray for them in that family in particular, as the enemy would try to come against them, or as they would, be risen up into a place of power or authority, make sure that they don't get taken out. That's one version. Another one is to watch for who comes into prominence, maybe a third, fourth, and fifth Trump. And then it's like, well, who's 1 and 2? I mean, I think we know who 1 is, but who would 2 be? So it could be Don Jr., could be Eric, could be,
Well, 1 and 2 could be dad.
Yeah.
Well, 2 could be Junior. One could be dad, 2 could be Junior. That would make a lot of sense. But then who's 3, 4, 5? The idea is it's almost like dance steps, or it's like steps in a progression, but we're in the middle of the progression, which it also could lead to the idea of Trump 2 is already in play. That's why 3, 4, 5 is what's coming.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
We're already
That's
into
what I
it.
thought.
So if that's the case, then what does 3, 4, and 5 represent? I think it could represent different terms, but it could also represent different people in those positions of authority. We're assuming we're talking the presidency.
Mhm.
It could be Eric, Ivanka, and Barron. It could be, any number of things. It could be, I don't have any idea who the grandkids are. So it could be, or how old they are, or if any of them are interested in politics. But certainly, there's been talk about Don Jr., Eric, and Ivanka at minimum, running for a national level office. But it would be interesting if, Trump coming back in a second term, or completes the rest of a second term and then does a third term, or hands the mantle over to 3, 4, and 5, whatever that looks like. I think it would be really interesting. And people that think that this kind of stuff can't happen in America, look in particular at the Roosevelts. I mean, 12 years in office, and that was just one. That was FDR. And then you look at Teddy as well, and they were cousins. So the idea, there were a lot of years where the occupants of the White House were named Roosevelt. And of course the Kennedys, but to a lesser extent, as far as it comes to the level of national prominence on the presidency in particular, certainly not when it comes to the Senate or Congress, but just interesting. I think what he's saying is don't count out the Trump family. But I do think that there's individual names attached to 3, 4, and 5, and I don't know that we're going to figure it out here on the phone or on the broadcast, but it might be something that we figure out later. If you could send us that in an email, I think it'd be interesting to study it further.
Okay.
Okay.
I had another one about Scooby-Doo and a vision, so I'll wait for later for that one.
Yeah, bring that one back. I'd like to hear it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina.
Let me see if we can get one more in. We gotta be out of here in about 4 minutes. But Matey.
Whoa. Hey, mine's too long. It's all about the sim course that I woke up and had this dream. And I did the Joseph method. It's very interesting, but I'll share it some other time because it's I don't think it'll take.
Okay. Sounds
good. I went through the Joseph steps. I was sitting in a hospital all day waiting for my cousin. So.
Oh wow! Well, cool. I'm excited to hear how that turned out. So
yeah.
Next time we'll have you on.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.
Mary Susan, did you get your sound back? Can't hear you. We got nothing. Sorry.
Rats.
Come back again, okay? See us again. All right, cool. Well, good. We got about 5 minutes before our next meeting. Thank you guys for being here with us tonight.
Yeah.
Certainly appreciate it. We love the participation. Sometimes it feels like I wish we could do this forever, and then I'm glad we get a break at 2 hours because it's a lot of work to focus and concentrate and listen. We want to give people the time they need, but we want to do short. We don't want to just 2 minutes or it's 5 minutes on each one. I was actually did a search today, just as an FYI. I was looking today to see if there's any other live dream interpretation on a regular basis on the internet, and I couldn't find any. I could find maybe one a month that maybe one ministry does. And by the way it looked, everybody puts their stuff in the comments. They don't bring anybody in. They don't do it live. And, that might be a better way to do it because then we're just reading comments. But we like to be able to have the interaction with people, and we like to give people the time that they need. And we don't want to just answer questions in the comments. We love to be able to hang out with you guys. So thanks again for being with us. We're back every Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. So if for some reason we weren't able to get to you today, which was just Mary Susan, then come back. And if we couldn't get in the back because it was filled up, please come back and see us again. We love you guys, and we put all of these resources together so you can learn how to hear the Lord at a deeper level. By the way, if you're interested in learning more about dream interpretation, check out Dream Life Decoded under classes. We have a dream class that is relatively new. That is an opportunity for you to be able to interpret dreams, not just to watch other people. So we'll see you next time.